Listen, my hometown is Niagara Falls and it's always filled with tourists, and let me tell you, sometimes tourists can go too far. Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. I'm your host Emily, and today we're going to be counting down our list of the top 10 terrifying times tourists disappeared on Sentinel Island. Now for those of you who don't know, North Sentinel Island is one of the Andaman Islands. It is home to the Sentinelese, an indigenous people in voluntary isolation who have defended, often by force, their protected isolation from the outside world. Coming in at number 10 is John Allen Chau. On November 21st, 2018, news came that the isolated tribe, the Sentinelese, ended the life of an American with a bow and arrow on remote Indian Island. John Allen Chau, who is reported to be a Christian preacher and a US citizen, was shot dead after he illegally entered the prohibited area with the help of local fishermen. He wanted to interact with the uncontacted people in his effort to preach Christianity among them, which I'm not going to get into that, but why on earth would he think that was a good idea? On the island, he was shot and died by the inhabitants, and John chronicled his missionary trip in a diary and came prepared to deal with any contingencies of contact with the hostile residents, including dental forceps for removing arrows. When John first wadded up to the island, he brought a large fish as a gift. "I hollered, 'My name is John, I love you, and Jesus loves you,'" he wrote in his diary. The Sentinelese people responded with arrows. Then he came back and dodged even more arrows, including one shot from a very young boy that pierced his waterproof Bible. "If you want me to actually get shot or even killed with an arrow, then so be it," wrote John in his diary that night. "I think I could be more useful alive though, but to you, God, I give you all the glory of whatever happens. I don't want to die." But that's exactly what happened, and not to victim blame, but what did he expect? He should have never gone there, because then he would still be alive today. Now, according to the fishermen who smuggled John to the island, they saw the Sentinelese people drag his body to the beach and bury it. The Indian government was unable to recover John's remains, and they are wherever the tribe left them. Hopefully this story has taught a lesson and prevents others from wanting to go to the island as well, because it will most likely have the same outcome. Number 9. Merchant ship. One night in 1771, an East Indian Company vessel sailed past the Sentinel Island and saw lights gleaming on the shore. But the ship was on a hydrographic survey mission and had no reason to stop, so the Sentinelese remained undisturbed for nearly a century until an Indian merchant ship called the Nivea ran around the reef. 86 passengers and 20 crew managed to swim and splash their way to the beach. They huddled there for 3 days before the Sentinelese evidently decided the intruders had overstayed their welcome, a point they made with bows and iron-tipped arrows. Western history only records the Nivea's side of the encounter, but it's interesting to speculate on what may have been happening in the Sentinelese's villages behind the scenes. The Nivea's passengers and crew responded with sticks and stones, and the two sides formed an uneasy truce until the Royal Navy vessel arrived to rescue the shipwreck survivors. Now these people were very lucky that they were able to be saved, because most people don't make it out of there alive. Number 8. Prisoner. In 1896, an escaped convict tried to flee the Great Andaman Island penal colony on a makeshift raft. In his escape, he washed ashore on North Sentinel Island. Now, it honestly would have been better for him to just remain in prison, considering the fate he was about to endure. After he escaped, a colonial search party found his remains a few days later, full of arrow wounds with his throat cut. So yes, the tribe again took another life. The British then wisely decided to leave the Sentinelese in peace, at least for the next century or so, which I think was the best call. I mean, if you see them acting out and being violent, why would you want to bug them? Number 7. The Navy. In 1880, a young Royal Navy officer named Maurice Vidal Portman took charge of the Andaman and Nicobar colony. Maurice fancied himself an anthropologist, and in 1880 he landed on North Sentinel Island with a large party of naval officers, convicts from the penal colony on Great Andaman Island, and Adamese trackers. They found only hastily abandoned villages, as the people seemed to have seen the intruders coming and fled, hiding in places further in the island, which was probably for the best. But one elderly couple and 4 children must have lagged behind, and Maurice and his search party captured them and carried them off to Port Blair, the colonial capital on the South Andaman Island. Soon, all 6 of the kidnapped Sentinelese became desperately sick, and the elderly couple died in Port Blair. Maurice somehow decided it was a good idea to drop off the 4 sick children on the beach of North Sentinel, along with a small pile of gifts. What he was planning to to do with these captives, I have no idea, but I'm glad he realized it was a bad idea. Now today, we have no way to know whether the children spread their illnesses to the rest of their people, or what its impact might have been, but I'm sure it's definitely disrupted the group, as that must have been a traumatic event for all of them. Number 6. Chief Commissioner. In an 1899 speech, Richard Carnac Temple, who served as Chief Commissioner of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands from 1895 to 1904, reported that he had toured North Sentinel Island to capture fugitives, but upon landing discovered that they had their lives ended by the inhabitants, who retreated in haste upon seeing his party approach. Richard also recorded a case where the Sentinelese apparently drifted off the Ong and fraternized with them over the course of 2 years. When Temple and Portman accompanied him to the tribe and tried to establish friendly contact, they did not recognize him and responded aggressively by shooting arrows at the group. Now the man refused to remain on the island, and Portman cast doubt on the exact time span the Sentinelese spent with the Ong and believed that he had probably been raised by the Ong since childhood. Temple concluded that the Sentinelese were a tribe in which slays every stranger, however inoffensive on sight, whether a forgotten member of itself or another Adamese tribe or a complete foreigner. Number 5. Anthropologists. 100 years after the wreck of Nivea, a team of anthropologists led by Trinik Nath Pandit, working under the guidance of the Indian government, landed on North Sentinel Island. Like Portman, they found only hastily abandoned huts, and people had fled so quickly that they left their fires still lit outside their homes. Pandit and his team left gifts, bolts of cloth, candy, and plastic buckets. But Pandit also stole from the Sentinelese, taking bows, arrows, baskets, and other items from their unguarded homes, despite the anthropologists' protests. Pandit and his colleagues kept trying to make contact, mostly by pulling a dinghy onto the beach, dropping off coconuts and other gifts, and beating a hasty retreat. The Sentinelese didn't care much for live pigs, which they speared and buried in the sand, or plastic toys, which got pretty much the same treatment, but they seemed pleased with metal pots and pans, and they quickly grew very fond of coconuts, which don't grow on the island. Pandit and his colleagues delivered them by the bagful, usually with bows and arrows trained on them until they departed. In 1981, a cargo ship called the Primrose and her crew of 28 ran aground on the reef in the eerie echo of the Nivea, but this time the sailors were rescued by helicopter, and the later visitors to the island say that the Sentinelese seem to have salvaged metal from the ship for their tools and weapons. The ship must have been an incredible find for them, and it seems like they didn't try to attack them, which is a good sign. Now that same year, Pandit and his team stepped up their efforts, dropping by the island every month or two. 25 years passed that way with no direct contact, but Pandit thought the visitors were building up some trust, which is interesting. Number 4. The King. The visits to the island were sporadic until 1981. A National Geographic film crew tagged along in 1974, and the director caught an arrow in the thigh for his trouble. Then the exiled King Leopold III of Belgium passed close to the island on a boat tour in 1975, and the Sentinelese warned him off with arrows. Now for some reason, the king was absolutely delighted by the whole thing, but it's safe to say that the tribe still wasn't happy having visitors. You'd think people would leave them alone, but again, they had been contacted. Number 3. Coast Guard. The Sentinelese survived the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and its after effects, including the tsunami and the uplifting of the island. Now 3 days after the earthquake, Indian Coast Guard helicopters flew over the island to check up on them. They found the Sentinelese in good shape and not at all pleased to see them, and not at all hesitant to attack the helicopter with bows and arrows. Although the tsunami disturbed the tribal fishing grounds, the Sentinelese appear to have adapted and everything seemed okay with them. Number 2. Attacks. In general, the Sentinelese have reportedly attacked approaching vessels, whether the boats were intentionally visiting the island or simply ran aground on the surrounding coral reef. The islanders have been observed shooting arrows at boats, as well as low-flying helicopters. Such attacks have resulted in multiple injuries and deaths, and personally I think people should just stay away from there and let them be. They don't want other people there, a message they've so very clearly conveyed. And coming in at number 1 is 2 fishermen. In January 2006, members of the tribe took the lives of 2 fishermen who had illegally approached their island. The tribe were under threat from poachers illegally fishing and diving for lobster around their island, and at the time, Survival's director Stephen Corey said contact with the outside world could very quickly wipe out its unique and vulnerable tribe. The local administration must ensure that the Sentinelese are left alone as long as that is their wish, and what happened last month made it very clear that it is. These tragic deaths could have been avoided if the authorities had been enforcing the law. Now the tribes ended the life of 2 men, Sundar Raj 48 and Pandit Tiwari 52, on on January 26 after they'd slept overnight in their boat near North Sentinel Island. Now, it is illegal to get within 5 kilometers of the island in order to protect the Sentinelese from exploitation, violence, and disease, which they have no immunity. But increasing numbers of people from neighboring islands visit the island to dive for lobster close to the shore and to hunt pigs on the island, depriving the tribe of essential food. Well, that's all for our list of the top 10 terrifying times tourists disappeared on Sentinel Island. Have you ever heard of this group before, and does this shock you? Let us know in the comments down below, and hey, why not like and subscribe while you're down there? I'm your host Emily, and we'll see you next time. Peace.